If you think the Book of Enoch is interesting, wait until you hear the Book of Giants. The Book of Giants was discovered in 1947 in the Dead Sea Scrolls discovery. The manuscript is dated to the 2nd century BC at the earliest, but could be much older. The same narratives as mentioned in the Book of Enoch of the fallen angels, their corruption of mankind, and their destruction through the flood of Noah is mentioned all throughout the Book of Giants. The scroll was found deteriorating, leaving only fragments of text, but the pieces of text we do have hold incredible information. The Book of Giants describes in great detail the fallen angels corrupting the genetics of all flesh that was on the earth. It tells us specifically in one of the fragments, fragment 1Q23 1 plus 6, 200 donkeys, 200 asses, 200 rams of the flock, 200 goats, 200 beasts of the field, from every animal, from every bird, were selected for miscegenation. Miscegenation refers to the mixing of races or species, particularly in the context of sexual intercourse. The next text that follows makes it absolutely clear that this wasn't referring to different species breeding with each other, but actual cross-species genetics involving the seed of the fallen angels themselves. It's important to notice that giants and monsters are referred to in unique, distinct references. We know from Genesis 6:4 that when humans and angels mated together, that the offspring they produced was giant humans, half human, half fallen angel. Fragment 4Q5312. They defiled, they begot giants and monsters. They begot, and behold, all the earth was corrupted. Through this, we can come to the conclusion that these fallen angels were breeding with animals, and their offspring would be half animal and half fallen angel and very large in size. This reality would make sense with all the ancient depictions of monsters and creatures. Maybe those creatures weren't figments of their imagination, but actual half-human, half-fallen angel monsters roaming the earth. These beings maybe could have even held the capacity to think and reason just like the giants could. We know that giants had the capability to hold conversations because of the account of Goliath challenging and enticing the armies of Israel in 1 Samuel 17:8-10. A fragment of the Book of Giants also confirms some of these monsters having the ability to reason and communicate, when some of the giants had dreams of their destruction and shared these dreams with the monsters. Fragment 4Q530, column 2. Thereupon 2 of them had dreams, and the sleep of their eyes fled from them, and they arose and came to, and told their dreams, and said in the assembly of their comrades, the monsters. These monsters didn't hold the same connection to the fallen angels as the giants. The Book of Giants and the Book of Enoch describes the fallen angels' close connection to their children, the giants. Whereas these monsters were their offspring, they weren't cared for as deeply by the fallen angels as the giants were. Here's a verse from the Book of Enoch. And inasmuch as they, the watchers, delight themselves in their children, the giants, the murder of their beloved ones shall they see, and over the destruction of their children shall they lament, and shall make supplication unto eternity. The Book of Giants, fragment 4Q530, fragment 7. The children of angels are the giants, and they would not let their loved ones be neglected. All throughout the Book of Giants, the giant children offspring of the fallen angels and humankind were having ominous dreams of their destruction. One of the giants has a dream of a tablet with many names submerged under water, and when lifted from the water only 3 names remained. This dream symbolizes the destruction of all the unpure fallen life forms on the earth through the flood of Noah. The great flood of Noah now makes sense. Noah, his family, and the animals that were brought onto the ark were brought on not because of their righteousness, but because the rest of creation had been corrupted by the fallen angels and their genetic manipulations. Cusco, Peru is the oldest living city in the Americas, with it being continuously inhabited for over 3,000 years, according to mainstream sources. It was the historic capital of the Inca Empire from the 13th to 16th century until the Spanish conquest in 1529. But Cusco and the Inca people have a history you won't hear from mainstream archaeological sources. This history is how the Inca inherited the megalithic structures left from the fallen angels, their offspring the giants, and whatever group of people were living with them at the time. The Inca people, through passed down oral tradition, even admit that these ancient megalithic structures seen within and around Cusco are not the doings of the Inca people, but was actually inherited by them when they came into the region. The possibility that ancient native people built these structures with their massive size and laser precision is impossible. I look to the supernatural explanation of Genesis 6:4 for understanding. The Bible verse that describes fallen angels and their offspring the giants alive and living among people during Earth's earliest days. Here are some of those supernatural examples. This wall within the city of Cusco is called the Roca Wall. We see the megalithic stones that look like they were molded into place, that even a human hair couldn't fit in between. We then see the Inca building techniques You can see it's almost like they tried to copy the previous megalithic techniques with some of the perfect placement stones, but it's nothing like the previous precision of the megalithic structures. We then see the Spanish colonial building techniques that have a lot of mortar and look really sloppy. Again, mainstream archaeology claims this to be the work of the Inca, but the Inca people even say themselves they didn't build these megalithic structures but inherited them. In this picture from the 1930s, you can see the megalithic wall with then an additional building around it in the classic Inca style, indicating that they found the structures when they moved into the region and then built off and around it. After all, why would they move from the incredibly safe and strong megalithic building style to the technique of just stacking stones? This picture shows a clear difference between fallen angel understanding, techniques, or technology, and the building of ancient people living during that period. Just north of Cusco is a site called Ollantaytambo. This site has what, interestingly enough, looks like a staircase for giants. We also see many structures there that were clearly built by Incan people, but at the top of the giant staircase, we see what's called the Temple of the Sun, which is a megalithic structure comprised of 6 50-ton stones. These stones are made of red porphyry that is too hard of a stone to be crafted with the tools that the Inca had at the time, just like all the other previous locations with megalithic stones. The quarry for these stones is also known to be 4 miles away. Even today, crafting and moving these massive stones would be an incredible feat. It's impossible to imagine such an act being done with just ropes and people. Sacsayhuaman on the northern outskirts of Cusco is one of the most impressive megalithic sites on Earth. The massive size of the stones here, with their precise placements and laser precision, is another example of impossible building techniques for ancient people. These stones once again look as if they were molded into place. The ancient people alive back then weren't filing these massive stones. They once again didn't even have the types of tools needed to do such a thing, and the stones don't have any signs of tool markings on them. The largest stone blocks at Sacsayhuaman are over 28 feet high and weigh around 120 tons. One of the stones on the outer wall is so precise that it has 12 precise cuts to fit in perfectly to match with 12 other stones. Quinco is a site near Cusco. This site is pretty incredible because it looks like the shape was just pulled right out of the natural stone with laser precision. Perfect angles, no deviation. The Inca at the time had bronze tools, way too soft to even work on this type of stone. They had not learned to work with iron yet. Similar to the other sites in and around Cusco, there are no tool markings on any of the stone cutouts. These incredible megaliths point to the supernatural. It makes no sense that all around the world, the very first stone structures that have been built were built in a way that's impossible to duplicate 3,000 years later. How is it that the oldest megalithic sites on Earth have the largest stones ever used in building? You would expect many ancient failed attempts and evidence of this all around, but that's not what we see. What we see is somehow the first massive building projects were done with laser precision and massive stones. Around the same time period, all throughout the earth is a report of giants, massive mighty men with 6 fingers and 6 toes living amongst the ancient people on almost every continent in almost every culture. Knowing the Bible to be true, because I've seen the fruit of following it within my own life and within the life of others who do, as well as clearly seeing God within its pages as you read it in your day-to-day life, the only explanation for me is to believe what it says about the ancient times, which clearly tells us that the fallen angels were on the earth during Earth's earliest history and that they mated with women and produced an offspring of giants. The full picture is clear. This is the only explanation as to how these ancient sites of Cusco, Peru were built. This region absolutely had fallen angels and giants within it within Earth's earliest history. Not far from Cusco, Peru is Tiwanaku, which has incredible megaliths as well. Peru also holds the Nazca lines, which are images that are only seen clearly from the sky, tying these entities to their ability to be in the air, which for me is one of many, many reasons to tie them to the current UFO and UAP phenomenon. These entities' ability to be in the air may also explain how they were able to move such massive stones long distances, or even how they were able to move them at all. The full picture starts to be seen when we look at the biblical texts referring to Earth's earliest days, coupled with the fact that at the same time, different cultures worldwide reported giants and have megalithic structures built. This is between groups of people who had no contact with each other. The point of contact that was made between these different groups of people were the fallen angels who were mingling with men. That's how we see this worldwide connection. And Cusco, Peru absolutely was a hotbed of activity for fallen angels and their offspring. Hopefully even more revelations and discoveries will come out that will point to this biblical truth, and will help lead people to Christ through the understanding of these ancient mysteries.
The giants who invaded the regions where mounds were found. These giants became the leaders and priests of the tribes. Over time, these ruling people, chosen through heredity, became corrupted and were exterminated. You may be surprised at the number of giant skeletons that have been uncovered throughout modern history. There is a number of discoveries that didn't make it to mainstream historical knowledge. Large bones in stone graves in Williamson County and White County, Tennessee, were discovered in the 1800s. The average stature of these giants was 7 feet tall. Giant skeletons were found in the mid-1800s in New York State near Rutland and Rodman. In 1833, soldiers digging at Lompoc Ranchero, California, discovered a male skeleton 12 feet tall. The skeleton was surrounded by caged shells, stone axes, and other artifacts. The skeleton had double rows of upper and lower teeth. Unfortunately, this body was secretly buried because the local Indians became upset about the remains. A giant skull and vertebra were found in Wisconsin and Kansas City as well. A giant found off the California coast on Santa Rosa Island in the 1800s was distinguished by its double row of teeth, common among giant skeleton finds. A 9-foot 8-inch skeleton was excavated from a mound near Brewersville, Indiana in 1879. Skeletons said to be of enormous dimensions were found in mounds near Zanesville, Ohio, and Warren, Minnesota in the 1800s. In Clearwater, Minnesota, the skeletons of 7 giants were found in mounds. These had receding foreheads and complete double dentation, 2 rows of teeth. At La Crescent, Minnesota, mounds were found to contain giant bones. 5 miles north, in Dreschbach, the bones of people over 8 feet tall were found. In 1888, 7 skeletons ranging from 7 to 8 feet tall were discovered. Though they may seem like a lot, near Toledo, Ohio, 20 skeletons were discovered with jaws and teeth twice as large as those of present-day people. The account also noted that odd hieroglyphics were found with the bodies. The aforementioned miners in Lovelock Cave, California, discovered a very tall red-haired mummy in 1911. A local native has a dress made from the hair of one of the giants from this area. In 1931, skeletons from 8.5 to 10 feet long were found in the Humboldt Lake bed in California. And in 1932, Ellis Wright found human tracks in the gypsum rock at White Sands, New Mexico. His discovery was later backed up by Fred Arthur, supervisor of the Lincoln National Park, and others who reported that each footprint was 22 inches long and from 8 to 10 inches wide. They were certain the prints were human in origin due to the outline of the perfect prints coupled with a readily apparent instep. During World War II, author Ivan T. Sanderson tells of how his crew was bulldozing through sedimentary rock when it stumbled across what appeared to be a graveyard. In it were crania that measured from 22 to 24 inches from base to crown, nearly 3 times as large as an adult human skull. Had the creatures to whom these skulls belonged been properly proportioned, they undoubtedly would have been at least 12 feet tall or taller. In 1947, a local newspaper reported the discovery of 9-foot-tall skeletons by amateur archaeologists working in Death Valley. The archaeologists involved also claimed to have found what appeared to be the bones of tigers and dinosaurs with the human remains. And the Catalina Islands off California are the home of dwarf mammoth bones that were once roasted in ancient pit fires. These were roasted and eaten by human-like creatures who were giants with double rows of teeth. As reported in the Nevada Review-Minor newspaper on June 19, 1931, in February and June of 1931, 2 very large skeletons were found in the Humboldt dry lake bed near Lovelock. One skeleton was 8.5 feet tall and was later described as being wrapped in a gum-covered fabric, not unlike Egyptian mummies. The other was almost 10 feet tall. It was said that all the tribes of the area stood together against these giants and chased them into a cave. The giants refused to leave the safety of the cave, so the Paiutes, along with other tribes, set the cave on fire. The cave then collapsed during an earthquake, sealing the entrance shut. When the area was mined for fertilizing materials, there were several fossils discovered in the early 1920s. Along with those fossils were the well-preserved human-like skeletons, 1 male and 1 female. The female was over 6 feet tall, and the male was over 8 feet tall. Along with the discovery of the skeletons, there were many other artifacts found, including a circular calendar that had the number of days and weeks of a year etched into it. In 1931, 2 more skeletons were discovered in Lockport, Nevada, that measured from 8 to 10 feet tall. During the past few years, a huge controversy has emerged, accusing the Smithsonian and a host of skeptics and archaeologists of covering up the discovery of hundreds of giant skeletons from Native American Indian mounds. Jim Barrera is one of the key people who began uncovering hundreds of newspaper accounts of giant skeletons. To date, Barrera has pulled together about 1,500 accounts from newspapers and books published in the 1800s and early 1900s. One intriguing set of giant skeleton reports he found factual was the Arkansas Chickasaw Mound reports of many large skeletons found at the site. Many skeletons ranging from 8 to 9 feet in length have been found there. As late as 1976, a 7-foot-tall skeleton was found at the site. For the Smithsonian to have found skeletons that were 7 feet tall by chance alone is improbable. The height of many of the individuals entombed in ancient American mounds was far taller than the general populace, far beyond what could be explained by simple chance. Why would the Smithsonian cover up such a find? Skeptics have related that the disorder of giantism probably was the cause of many reports, but they actually cite no evidence for this assertion. It is a weak attempt to explain away and dismiss the issue. Giantism is exceedingly rare, so rare there is no actual evidential statistics for it. America has less than 100 cases of giantism recorded in its history. In fact, the overwhelming vast majority of tall people today, who's reaching or approaching 7 feet, do not have the disorder of giantism. The actual percentage of modern humans who reach 7 feet in height is 0.00007%. In the ancient world of America's mound builders, the percentage of the population that reached 7 feet in height would have been much lower. Skeptics claim that freezing and thawing make skeletons so big they might look like a giant. It was found to be completely wrong in basis. Modern paleopathology texts and sources relate that very bones that freeze can shatter.
Angels consumed everything that the earth produced. The great fish, the birds in the sky, all the fruit of the earth, all kinds of grain, the fruit of the trees, even beasts and reptiles they committed sin against. All the creeping things of the earth they observed and abused. They performed every harsh deed with harsh utterance upon male and female creations, and upon humanity itself. The 200 angels seized 200 donkeys, 200 asses, 200 sheep and rams of the flock, 200 goats, 200 beasts of the field from every animal and from every bird, for experiments in breeding with humans and all types of miscegenation. From these deeds, monsters were created and flourished across the earth. The monsters sought out flesh, which would be destroyed or perverted. Monsters and giants would arise who were lacking in true knowledge, because they were abominations. In the meantime, the earth grew ever more corrupt, and the giants more mighty. They considered trying to persuade other angels to come upon the earth, otherwise their tyranny might ultimately perish and die. All the time, they were causing great corruption in the earth. If this goal did not suffice to perpetuate them, they thought they would be finally destroyed. The fallen ones defiled all creation, and begot giants and monstrous creatures, and corrupted all the earth, which was defiled by bloodshedding at the hands of the giants. But this did not suffice them, and they were seeking constantly to devour and destroy many more. The monsters attacked all creation. The giant named Mawe then had a dire vision. In his dream, a great tablet, upon which was inscribed several names, was immersed in water. When the tablet emerged from the water, only 3 names remained of the generation of Adam. Mawe reported his dream to the other giants, wherein he described that men drenched the tablet in water so that it was covered. It was then lifted out, and all the inscriptions but 3 had vanished. The dream was then discussed among them.
"This vision is cause for cursing and sorrow,"
said the group.
"I
Said Mawe.
am the one who will be blamed most of the whole group, for those cast down out of heaven, and I shall have to go to hear the spirits of the slain complaining about their killers, and crying out that we shall all die together, and be made an end of. When I am sleeping and dreaming, bread and shelter will be denied me."
So, troubled with this vision, the monsters entered into the gathering of the giants. Then Oya spoke, without trembling, to Mawe.
"Who showed you all this vision, my brother?" "Barakel, my father, was with me as corroborator, and it seemed he experienced the same vision."
But before Mawe had finished telling what he had seen in his dream, Oya said to him,
"Now I have heard wonders. If a barren woman gives birth, that would be an equal wonder.
Thereapon Oya said to Haya.
Are we to be destroyed upon this earth?"
When they had finished discussing the dreams, both Oya and Haya wept greatly before the assembled giants and monsters.
"Use your strength."
The group counseled. Then Oya said to Haya,
"This doom is not for us, but for wicked Azazel, for he showed the most corruption to humanity. They surely will not let all their beloved creations be neglected. We are not to be cast down. You, all of you, have strength and can resist."
The giants, after a moment of contemplating this, however, realized that fighting heaven is futile. The giant who is named Gilgamesh stepped forward to speak.
"I am a giant, and by my mighty strength in my arm, I can vanquish anyone who is mortal. I have made war with the mortals in the past, but I am not now able to stand against my opponents who reside in heaven and dwell in holy places. And not only this, but they are in fact stronger than I am. The day of the ravening wild beasts has come, as has that of the wild man, as I am known."
Then Oya said to him,
"I have been forced to have a dream. The sleep of my eyes vanquished so that I could see a vision. Now I know that on the field of battle we cannot win. Gilgamesh, take heed of these words."
The sons of God consumed everything that the earth produced, the fish, the birds, all the fruit, and all the grain. They even committed sins against the beasts and the reptiles. They performed every harsh deed with harsh utterance upon male and female creation, and upon and among humanity itself. 200 angels left heaven for earth. The 200 angels seized 200 donkeys, 200 asses, 200 sheep, and rams of the flock, 200 goats, 200 beasts of the field from every animal and from every bird, for experiments and breeding with humans. The fallen ones defiled all of creation, and begat giants and monstrous creatures. They corrupted the entire earth, defiling it by shedding blood at the hands of the giants. But this did not satisfy them, and they sought to devour and destroy much more. They were abominations who lacked true knowledge, and as the earth grew more corrupt, the giants grew more powerful. They considered persuading more angels to come to earth, otherwise their rule might perish and die. They caused great corruption on the earth, and believed that perpetuating that corruption was the only way to avoid destruction themselves. One day, the giant Mawe had a vision that men drenched a tablet in water so that it was covered. It was then lifted out, and all the inscriptions but 3 had vanished. He went to the other giants to discuss the dream. "This vision is cause for cursing and sorrow," they said to him, and Mawe replied, "I am the one who will be blamed for the deeds of those cast down out of heaven, and I shall have to go hear the spirits of the slain, complaining about their killers, and crying out that we should all die together. When I am sleeping and dreaming, bread and dwelling will be denied to me." So troubled with this vision, the monsters entered into the gathering of the giants. The giant Oya, son of Shemyaza, said to Mawe, "Who showed you all this vision, my brother?" "Barakel, my father, was with me, and experienced the same vision." But before Mawe had finished telling what he'd seen in his dream, Oya said to him, "Now I have heard wonders. If a barren woman is giving birth, now that would be a wonder." Then Oya said to his brother Haya, "Are we to be destroyed upon this earth?" When they had finished discussing the dreams, both Oya and Haya wept before the assembly of giants and monsters. "Use your strength," the group said. Then Oya said to Haya, "This vision is for Azazel, for he showed the most corruption to humanity. The good angels will surely not let us be neglected. We are not to be cast down. We have strength and can fight for ourselves if need be."
Demons known as the Seirim, who, like the Watchers, lusted after human women. It cannot be a total coincidence that the church imagined the devil or Satan in the form of a hairy, half-human he-goat with a massive erect phallus who had sexual intercourse with his female worshippers at the witches' Sabbath. Shemziah is seen by some modern Luciferians as either the emissary of Lumiel or one of his avatars, an incarnated being in human form. He not only fell in love with human women, but also with the Babylonian deity Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. She promised to have sex with him if he would, in return, reveal to her the secret name of God. When Shemyaza told her, Ishtar used this forbidden knowledge to ascend to the stars, and she reigned over the constellation of Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters. While the other Watchers were rounded up by the archangels and punished by God, Shemyaza voluntarily repented his error and sentenced himself to hang upside down in the constellation of Orion the Hunter, with whom he is sometimes identified in the Luciferian tradition. In the Kabbalistic tradition, Nama, the sister of the biblical first smith Tubal-Cain, seduced Azazel, and she has been associated with Ishtar, a race between gods and men. As we have seen, the result of the illicit relationships between the Watchers and the daughters of men was, according to Judeo-Christian propaganda, the spawning of a monstrous race of warlike, blood-drinking, cannibalistic giants called the Nephilim. Genesis 6, verse 4, less dramatically describes them as the mighty men of old, men of renown. At first, they were fed manna, ambrosia, or the food of the gods, by Yahweh to stop them from consuming human flesh. But they rejected it. They slaughtered animals for food instead, and then began to hunt down and eat human prey. It has been speculated that this legend is based on the culinary habits of the nomadic desert herdsmen in the Middle East, who were voracious meat-eaters. In the biblical myth of Cain and Abel, the dispute between the two brothers that led to the first murder is over the nature of the offerings made to Yahweh. Abel, the keeper of sheep or nomadic herdsman, offered the firstlings of his flock, and Cain, who was a tiller of the ground or farmer/gardener, offered the fruit of the ground. Genesis chapter 4, verses 2 through 4. Abel's burnt offerings of animal flesh and blood were pleasing to Yahweh, but he rejected the vegetables, the cereal, and the fruit offered by his brother. On a purely material level, as opposed to a mythic and spiritual metaphor. This story may reflect the struggle for dominance between nomadic herdsmen and the early farmers of the Neolithic Age in the Middle East. The idea of semi-divine heroes was born from the ancient myths of unions between the gods and mortals. The poet and writer Pindar, 518 to 438 BCE, described the heroes of the past as a race between gods and men. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, the terrible human-eating Nephilim are in fact described as the guardians of arcane knowledge, who knew all the mysteries of science and nature. There are also oblique references to the breeding techniques that they taught, which suggest they instructed early humans in the domestication and rearing of animals. Additional references also hint at experiments that led to the creation of monsters by the interbreeding of animals with different and unrelated species. In modern theosophical occultism, there are legends about the lost continent of Atlantis, which claim its scientists bred half-human, half-animal hybrids as a slave race. In our own time, scientists are experimenting with genetic research and animal cloning experiments. It's widely rumored that in China there have been, recently, abortive attempts to create a new half-human, half-animal hybrid species. These unnatural experiments led to the cataclysmic disaster that destroyed Atlantis. This also relates to the destruction of the Nephilim and the early human race in the biblical flood. Records of such an event can also be found in the mythology of ancient peoples worldwide, and especially among the Babylonians in the Middle East. In fact, it is claimed that the story of Noah and the flood in the Old Testament originated in Babylonian and Sumerian myths. 10,000 BC and the end of the Ice Age. It's known that around 10,000 BCE there seems to have been a cultural explosion that transformed early humankind. At the end of the last ice age, the first signs of agriculture appeared in the Middle East, with a shift from a nomadic, hunter-gatherer lifestyle to that of settled farming. This marked the beginning of civilization in this area. As early as 9500 BCE, barley, wheat, and rye were being cultivated, and oats, peas, and lentils were being grown by our Neolithic ancestors in what is now modern Kurdistan between Turkey and Iraq. At the same time, dogs, goats, and sheep were also domesticated. Within 1,000 years, copper and lead smelting was being practiced in Anatolia, modern Turkey, and archaeologists believe this process was first discovered in Kurdistan, along with weaving and pottery making. The ancient Kurdish culture was also the first to develop a script and was one of the earliest literate societies in the Middle East. The Kurds claim to be the descendants of the children of the jinn, spirits, the offering of a mating between the jinns and mortal women. In some parts of Kurdistan, especially among the sect of Yazidis, who worship the peacock angel, Azazel, leader of the fallen angels, can be found tall, fair-haired people with blue eyes. Although anthropologists believe they may be of ancient European ancestry, popular folk belief among the Kurds says they are the descendants of the children of the jinn, who in ancient times brought civilization to early mankind. In general, the ancient Middle East was known as the cradle of civilization, with the earliest city-states being founded in the Mesopotamian area, modern Iraq and Iran. The early indigenous peoples of the region, the Sumerians and Akkadians, developed the first written language, studied astronomy, and created libraries. The Babylonians and Assyrians followed them, and in the mythology of all these races are stories of how the gods descended to earth and taught them the arts of civilization. In the book of Enoch, it says that when Yahweh saw the lawlessness, chaos, corruption, and sexual immorality that had been caused by the interaction of the Watchers and the humans, he decided to intervene through the agency of the archangels Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel. He commanded Raphael to bind Azazel hand and foot like a sacrificial goat and cast him into a deep ravine in the desert. Gabriel was sent on a divine mission to destroy the bastards and reprobates and the children of the Watchers amongst men. The archangel Michael, commander of the army of God, was sent to arrest Shemyaza and bind him under the earth until Judgment Day. As we have seen, The fallen angel repented his sins and sentenced himself to cosmic exile among the stars. The Book of Jubilee says that the archangels bound the watchers in the depths of the earth, and in Judaic lore they are imprisoned in a mysterious second heaven. However, it is also said that some of these mighty warriors have a special place reserved for them in Sheol, the Jewish underworld. There they are said to lie in state, with shield and spear intact. Christian O'Brien has suggested there is a connection between the biblical watchers and the semi-divine, semi-mythical Tuatha De Danann. This race of ancient magicians descended to Earth on the sacred hill of Tara in prehistoric Ireland. With the coming of Christianity, the Tuatha De Danann were banished into the Hollow Hills and became the She, or Shining Ones, the elves and fairies of Irish lore. There's always been a strong belief among the peasantry in Ireland that the good people, or fairies, were originally the fallen angels who sided with Lucifer in the battle of heaven.